All right, guys. So today we are going to talk about exception handling. This is a very, very important concept in Java. And without this, if you program your code without proper exception handling, it might be called as incomplete programming, because uh, when you design something, when you design a program, when you write a program or software, you kind of have to make it in a manner where it is not supposed to be abruptly stopped in between. You have to provide a proper uh, fault tolerance or proper exception handling, or any exception which comes at runtime, so that your program doesn't stop abruptly in between. You want your program to be intelligent enough to come out of a problem. If it encounters a problem, it should come out of it and not just hang there and say, I'm not able to proceed. So if you make your program without exception handling, and if something unforeseen happens, which you're not sure, and if that happens, your program will stop, right? And that's a very bad thing to happen with any of the programs. That's the reason I'm saying this is of utmost importance, and you need to learn how and what aspect of it. Okay, so that's what our today's agenda is. And trust me, it's not complex at all. It's the most simple thing you might study in Java, basically. Only thing is, people find it sometimes an overhead to implement it. At least if I talk about the newbies, the new people, when they embark upon this journey of learning Java, when they start creating programs, they find it an overhead of writing these exception handling code. But that's the biggest mistake they make. Okay, so because you all are in the learning phase and you have all started writing your code, so it's about time you start learning this and start using exception handling almost everywhere you write your code. So after today's lecture, when you write a code, it should not be without exception handling. That's what I'm expecting out of you. Even though if I give you a next assignment on some different topic, and if I see the code and if I see the right code, but if that right code is not enclosed with the exception handling code, that will be considered as incomplete code. Okay, so you have to start making use of try catch or kind of exception handling here. So before I show you the actual code, maybe little bit theory. Okay, so the reason I explained you guys about inheritance and inheritance and interfaces and abstract classes is because everything in Java is structured in those formats. The internal libraries of Java uses lot of inheritance and interfaces and abstract classes, all of these concepts, and the same concept is kind of applicable here. So you see this diagram. So Java has a mechanism to handle the unexpected errors. Okay, and those errors are kind of structured in the form of classes, right? So the parent class here is called as throwable. I'll show you that in the code as well in a while, but just take these, whatever you see here is nothing but a class. So throwable is a class, this block is a class, throwable, and this is the parent of all kind of exceptions. And you can even go and create your own exceptions, by the way. If you want to create your own exception, you can. All you have to do is to inherit throwable, and you can create your own custom made exception. Okay, so throwable here has two kind of classes. One is exception, one is error, and there's a difference between these error, exception and errors. We'll talk about it. So exception here has again two categories. One is called as checked exception, and second is called as unchecked exception. So checked exception and unchecked exception. I'll talk about it in a while. So what you see here is checked exception, and what you see here is unchecked exception. Okay, so if I have to explain you checked and unchecked, so if we talk about checked first, checked actually, as the name suggests, checked. That means the compiler, Java compiler, when you write your code and when you try to compile it, at the very same moment, the compiler checks if the code which you're writing is throwing an exception which comes under this category. So if the code which you're writing is capable of throwing input output exception or SQL exception or class not found exception, or there are few more exception which comes under checked exception. So if that is the case, then it will immediately throw you the exception. That means it will show you the error in the before you even run it, right? You see the error in the Eclipse, right? If you're making a mistake, Eclipse show you the error, right? So you will see that error before you even go and run it. रन करने के पहले ही आपको एक्सेप्शन दिख जाएगा. That is called as checked. That means the compiler has checked it. Compiler ने check कर लिया है पहले ही that this exception is a checked exception, and it should not allow you to run it. Before even you try to run it, it will show you the exception. I will demonstrate all of this in the code. Then second kind is unchecked, which is the compiler has no idea that what's going to happen, right? So for example, when you try to do 1 by 0, so the compiler will allow it. Compiler will say, I don't care, right? Whether you are doing 1 by 0 or 0 by 1 or what you 1 by infinity, how you're doing it, I don't care. It will not throw any error. Compiler will compile the code. But when you actually run it, then you actually get to, or then actually the executor, the runtime environment will throw the exception. That comes under runtime. If this is too much theory, how you can understand it in this way? अगर कंपाइल करते वक्त ही आपको एक्सेप्शन एरर आ रहा है, राइट, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज चेक्ड एक्सेप्शन. कंपाइल करने से पहले, मतलब रन करने से पहले ही अगर आपको आ रहा है, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज चेक्ड एक्सेप्शन. इफ एनी एक्सेप्शन इज थ्रोन एट रन टाइम, you can understand them as runtime exception or unchecked exception. Okay, so this has a list. I mean, quite a lot of exceptions are there. The arithmetic exception, null pointer exception. This is very common. Everyone gets that, and everyone kind of get confused. At least what I could recall, everyone used to come to me with this, sir, I'm getting null pointer exception. I don't know why. And it's very easy why you're getting it. We'll talk about it. And but this is a very common type of exception where you declare something, but you don't initialize, and then you try to perform an operation on it. Then you always will be getting null point exception. I'll take some time to explain this today itself. So all of these are unchecked. That means if there is an exception, the compiler will not talk about it or will not notify you at all. It will let you, it will let you execute the program. And that's why this is the most dangerous one, because when you write a code, if it is your code is throwing in a checked exception, then immediately your compiler will tell you, so you are safe here. This is safe. But in these cases, unchecked exception, compiler will not tell you. Compiler will say, you figure out on your own. It's your problem. I don't care. Okay, so basically these two kind of exception. Then third is error. You really cannot recover out of it, because if this is thrown, that means you're lost. Like stack overflow, memory is full, virtual machine error, out of memory error. These doesn't comes under. I mean, these are irrecoverable. You cannot just, because if something is full, memory is full, your program will hang anyway. But it has some utility. But we really are least bothered about this. Our main problem statement lies under this exception category, and that is what we're going to focus more on today. Okay, so this much theory, and I have many programs today to explain. I added these programs today itself. You see, 5 hours ago. I did it today itself. Around how many? At least 10-15 programs to discuss today. So let's get started quickly. Okay, let me move to our Eclipse. Cool. So we are here. This is our Eclipse. And this is our exception handling. So we'll start with A, which is a very simple one. So you see here, this is class A. Then inside this, I have a public static void main, which is fine. And I have two things here. So this is a class which I think few of you are not very aware of. This is a class in Java which is used for converting an integer which is actually placed inside a string. So sometimes it could so happen that you have a string, and you have a string, let's say str, and you have a number there 1 2 3. This is an integer, but this is placed inside a string. Okay, and let's say you want to add this with a number. Okay, and if you try to add this in C str plus 4, it will not allow you. It will give you an error. It will say, okay, this is a string and you are trying to add a number which is 4, and you're trying to add a number which is 4 with this string. So I will not allow it. So you will get a error. By the way, this is not an exception. Okay, this is an error. So every error which you see here is not an exception. So how exception looks, that I'll show you later. But this is not an exception. This isn't just an error, compile time error. All right. So string str123 int p is equal to 4. This will give you an error. So to handle such situation, you have a special class in Java wherein you can parse the integer out of a string. Parse simply means fetching. Parse is an English word which you can understand it as fetching something. So I'm saying fetch integer out of the string, right? So right now I'm not talking about exception handling. I'm just trying to explain you this so that you know what this really does. So what I will do is, instead of doing this, what I can do is I can say int parse int, and I'll say integer dot parse int, and I'll say str. Okay, so now what will happen if I want to add 1 2 3 with 4? What I can do is I can now use the parsed integer value. So the program, how it would work, this is an integer, this is an string, and inside the string I have an integer. So I will use this variable here, and integer dot parse string parse int will fetch the number from here, from this string, and save it inside parse int, and then I can actually add it. Now I can add it, right? But the thing is, you have to be sure that this string contains an integer. If this string contains this, and you try to parse int from this string, which is this, and because there is no integer inside this, right? So this will throw you an exception, and that exception will be number format exception, right? So if I show you, and if I just run this, you see I'm getting an error, which is exception in thread this, number format exception. Let me show you. This is called a stack trace, by the way. Okay. Now this also could happen with you, that sometimes you're getting now you get the errors most of the time, right? And when you get the error, you need to know at what line it got thrown, right? So to do that, this is what you look into. This is called a stack trace, and the first line tells you what is the type of exception which you're going to which you got while execution, and then you actually get to see the lines where you exactly got it. So this is A because you got it here. Then it also is telling you at what line of these methods it was actually got thrown. So you shouldn't be worried too much about these exceptions, these lines. You should be looking into the class which makes sense to you, because we wrote a class. So if I click here, I'll see an error which was thrown at this line. And if you notice, it thrown an error here at this line, and after that it abruptly means अपने आप रुक गया वहीं पे, immediately वहीं के वहीं रुक गया, right? This is called as abrupt halt. abrupt stop. This is a bug in our program. So idea is, if you're writing a code, it should be fault tolerant. I mean, if there is some unforeseen happens during the execution, it should be able to handle it, right? And that's the reason we actually make use of try and catch, right? So instead of the programmer writing something like this, he should be writing, let me comment this. He should be writing everything inside a try. So what will happen now if integer.parse int hey, right? Now this is surely will throw an exception, because an integer class, a method parse int, cannot fetch any integer out of hey, because it doesn't have an integer, right? It cannot fetch anything. It cannot convert this into integer. This is just for conversion. It cannot convert this into integer. So it will throw an error. It will throw an exception. This will come under unchecked exception. This is an unchecked exception, something which I was talking here, right? This is runtime exception, also called as unchecked exception, number format exception, right? So this is your number format exception. And since you have written it inside try block, this is called as try block. Since you have written this inside try block, so what will happen? This will throw an error, but the program will not stop. Program will check, okay, I am inside a try. Program will say, okay, I'm inside a try block. Let's go and look at a catch, which is catching the exception which I'm throwing, or this line is throwing. So the idea is, whatever this line is throwing, you have to catch that explicitly. Okay, so this example which you're seeing here is explicitly mentioned that if this specific line is throwing number format exception, this type of exception, because exception can have many types. So one exception is arithmetic exception, second is null pointer exception, and every type of error need to have a specific category or type of exception. So this exception, if you notice here, this is a number format exception, right? And that's the reason in the catch I have mentioned number format exception. Okay, so let me do a small quiz with you guys. Let's see if you understood this. So let's say I'm writing here system.out.println, I am worried, will I get executed? So now I will keep on making few small changes in the program. Okay, and then you guys have to tell me whether you have to tell me what exactly will be the output of this. So now you tell me what will be the output. So if I run this program, what will happen? Can anyone tell me? Or in the chat, if you want to say, you can unmute and say, or if you don't want to, you're not feeling like speaking, then you can put in chat. What will be the output? I'm waiting. Batch 8, batch 9, both can type, no issues. Apurva saying it will stop here. Apurva saying program stops here. Okay. Stop here. Who's saying this? Apurva. Yadnesh also saying program will stop, but he's not saying at what step. Guys, give it a wild guess. Come on. I know it's after lunch, post lunch time, and people are feeling sleepy, but try.
So both the output will come. Thought and I am worried, will I get executed?
So was it Ashutosh?
No, this side, Arpit.
Arpit, okay. So Arpit is saying this line will get executed, is it?
Yes.
Arpit is saying this will execute. Okay, Arpit saying this will execute. Any more guesses?
Sir, program will stop at line number 13.
Okay, this was the Shani?
Yes, sir.
The Shani program stops here. So let's see what happens. Let's see, let me run it now. Enough guesses, right? So let me run Java application. And it turns out that Dishani was right. So it stopped at line 13. Why? Because this is not inside try catch. This is not really inside try catch, is it? Right? So that because this is not inside try catch and the exception got thrown here and I did not handle it in my program. So that's the reason I got an exception on this 13 line and my program stopped. So nothing will get printed after this. Even this line will also not get printed because it abruptly will stop here. The word I'm using here is abruptly. I don't know what's the Hindi word for it.
सर
अचानक से हाँ अचानक से रुक गया. Okay, अचानक से रुक जाएगा यहाँ पे, which we don't want because we don't want surprises in our coding at least. Imagine the SpaceX Tesla rocket Falcon Heavy is going and there is a bug in the system, you know, and abruptly the program stopped in the middle. What will happen to those astronauts, right? So this is the least thing which we would expect in our code. It shouldn't be doing something abruptly. It should be smooth. It should be all handled. If this happens, do this. If that happens, do that. If this happens, then do that. If you're sure, then you use if and else. If you're not sure, because sometimes anything could happen and your program should be intelligent enough to come out of a problem. That's where try catch comes into picture. So here, since this was not present inside and try catch, that's the reason the error exception was thrown at this line. So let me give another example. So because I just added here, I will do some more changes. So I will let's see. I will do this, and I am worried too. Will I get executed? Okay. How about now? What will happen now? Tell me what will be printed. Okay, I got a chat. Sudden. What is sudden? Okay, I see. Yeah. Yeah, I am expecting answers, guys. What should be the output here? Tell me what will be printed. Caught. Okay, you're saying caught. Then so there should be something more which should be printed, right?
I am worried, will I get executed?
Okay, so people are saying first caught and then this.
Sir, I am worried too. That will be executed, then caught, and then last one.
Okay, so Dishani is saying this will be getting executed, then this, and then this. Okay,
Yes.
Let me write it down. Dishani says 3 lines. 2, caught, and worried. Okay. Anyone here who says this is not right? Because I think Yadnesh said that caught will be printed only. Who else? Any other answers?
So caught and I am worried, will I get executed?
This is Pooja, I guess. Caught and I am worried will be executed. Okay, anyone else?
So 3 lines will be executed.
Which one?
Worry 2, caught,
Okay.
and worry.
Who is this? Preeti?
Kirti.
Kirti, okay.
Yes.
Okay, Kirti is with Dishani on this, okay. All right, great. Let's run it then, okay? Sorry, anyone wishes to say something?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rajeshri.
Read to first one try and then cut. Last line.
I didn't catch anything what you said, but I think you are also supporting, you are also endorsing this one, is it?
No, sir. First, I am worried too. Will I get executed? and then caught.
Ah, okay. This is a different answer. Okay. Okay, so I'll not write it. I'll recall it. Because only one of these answers is right actually. So if I run this, let's see. Run as. So caught and I am worried. So 2 lines, caught and I am worried. So winner here is Pooja. Pooja is winner. All right. So people, you need to understand this. So see, the moment an exception is thrown, if I am in a try block, an exception is thrown. So at what line exception will be thrown? Exception will be thrown at line number 18. So the moment exception is thrown, the pointer, the Java runtime will skip anything which is beneath the line at which error originated. That is, अगर यहाँ पे error आ रहा है, तो इसके नीचे के सारी lines execute नहीं होंगी. कहाँ तक? जहाँ तक try catch है आपका, जहाँ तक आपका try है. Okay, so these lines will not be getting executed. That's the reason I am worried too will not execute it. So Dishani and Kirti, both of you are wrong. Okay. Yeah. So the thing is, error originated, and error was of the type what? Number format exception. So that's the reason it got caught here. So now I have caught here. So caught was printed. So Nish said caught, but this is completed. Exception originated here. यहाँ catch हो गया. Try catch block is completed. So the pointer will move on to the next line because it has recovered from the problem. Problem recovery is completed. So it will not stop. So Yadnesh, when Yadnesh said caught, Yadnesh thought, okay, the caught will be printed and then a program will stop. No, program will move on to the next line. So that's the reason caught will be printed as well as I am worried will also be printed. Right? So in this case, Pooja was correct. Now, tell me one more thing. So if I make a small change here again, so I'll say, now you guys tell me what will happen. What will be printed? See, I'm experimenting with the same code so that you get to understand the differences between exceptions and how the try catch really works, how the pointer moves on. So try to pay attention and try to give your answers. Anyone?
Nothing will print, sir. My guess.
Okay, good. Nothing will print. So Mr. Arpit here is saying nothing will be printed. Okay. Nothing will be printed. All right. Okay. What else? Anyone else?
For the last line of the program.
Last line of the who was that? Apurva?
Yes, sir.
See, I have started to recognize your voices.
Yes, sir. Last one line.
So Mr. Sujit, am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, last line. What else about other people?
So only I am worried will be printed.
Okay,
Last
Yadnesh is
line.
saying last line. Yadnesh and Preeti both said last line. Okay. Okay, let's see. Let's try to run it. Good. Thank you for the responses. Let's run it. Save yes. Proceed. There was an exception thrown, guys. What happened? So who was right? Arpit said nothing will be printed, which is kind of partially true, but exception was printed. So half marks for Arpit. And you guys failed. All 4 of you failed. See, previously we had number exception here, isn't it? We had what kind of exception? We had number format exception written here. This was originally written here. Now this line is throwing, and whatever code I have written here is throwing a specific type of exception, right? And that specific type of exception is number format exception. So what will happen? The program, when it executes, it will say, okay, I'm inside a try block. So the program will be happy that I'm inside a try block. And the error will be originated at this line, which is okay, also fine. But then the compiler or the runtime will actually look for the appropriate exception. What is an appropriate exception for this error? The appropriate exception is supposed to be number format exception, but what it got is null pointer exception. And it didn't like that. Compiler said, no, I will not get caught inside the wrong exception category. Because there's only one catch here, and the catch here is it's saying कि अगर यहाँ पे कहीं पे भी null pointer exception आता है, null pointer exception, specific type of exception called as null pointer exception. If I'm getting a null pointer exception, only then I will go here. Okay, otherwise I will shout. Okay, something like my daughter asked me to buy something, buy a gift for her. She asked for a doll. I bought some weird game, and then I came home and I said, okay, this is the gift. If she likes it, she will enjoy. If she doesn't, then she will shout, something like that. Here, this exception which is being thrown, the compiler couldn't find an appropriate match here. So what compiler will do? Compiler will shout. Compiler will say, no, I will not accept it. I will abruptly stop. And it will just stop. And that's what really happened. It abruptly stopped. Okay, nothing was printed. यहाँ पे रुक गया program आपका इसी line पे. Right? Okay. One last thing with the same example. What if I do this? Now you guys tell me what will happen. Now this should be easy.
Sir,
Caught
the
and
last line.
I am
Caught and
worried.
I am worried will I get it?
Yeah, everyone started shouting. Okay. Yeah, this is a simple one. Yeah, so Yadnesh saying last line. Yadnesh is saying last line. Yadnesh, do you think this will not be printed? Okay, Yadnesh saying this will not. So everyone is saying caught, and this Yadnesh is saying this will not be printed. Okay, let's see. Run as Java application. Oh, burn. Yadnesh failed. Okay, no worries. I'll try to explain this. The thing is, we discussed this in inheritance. Remember that if you have a class and you have a child class, so you have a parent class and child class, so you can represent your child class instance using your parent class. Something like this. So inheritance, parent, child, parent. Yeah, something like this. So if this is a child class, so your child class can be saved inside an object of type, or which is the parent of it. So let's say parent class. If I say parent class, this will actually work for me, isn't it? Not exactly the same, but the similar concept is applying here. Because if you remember from this diagram, all of the exception which you see here, right? Arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, all of these exception actually are being inherited from exception. So arithmetic exception, null pointer exception, number format exception is a child of exception. How can I know that for precise? How will I know that exactly? I can actually go inside this. If I go inside this, I will see this extends illegal argument exception. Okay, what happened to my... So illegal argument exception is a child of runtime exception. Runtime exception is a child of exception, right? So exception is the forefather of what? It's a forefather of number format exception. So the idea is I can just simply put here, and this actually simply means exceptions here simply means, because all kind of exception, no matter what exception you have in this pillar, everyone has a parent exception, and exception parent is throwable. So the idea is, if you are writing exception here, no matter what kind of exception is being thrown, it will always be caught here. So now the compiler says, oh, okay, I got an exception, number format exception. Do I have a number format exception here in the catch? It will say no. Then it will check, do I have a parent of it? No. Do I have a parent of that? No. Do I have a parent? Do I have a forefather of it? The answer is yes, because exception is the parent of number format exception. And the moment you write exception here, the compiler is again now happy. Compiler will say, okay, I'm bahut khush hu, and I will understand the exception. I will catch it. I will not abruptly throw any kind of error. So this is also called a generic exception. So if you are not very sure about what exception to put, you put exception here. But this is a wrong practice. Okay, you should always know what kind of exception your program is supposed to be throwing, or what kind of exception it would throw. But again, there is a probability. Then you might think, oh, I'm not sure. I cannot be sure what kind of exception it could throw, because if I already knew what kind of exception it would throw, I would make some changes, right? The whole nature of exception is it could come anytime, and that's why we call it runtime exception, right? So you need to make your code in such a manner so that you have a provision to add multiple kinds of catches, right? So what you can do here, you can do 3-4 things. You can say, okay, if number format exception comes, I will catch it, and I will say caught number format exception, number format exception. Then you will say, okay, but I can't be sure whether number format exception will be thrown. Maybe some different kind of exception is thrown. So I will say, okay, if that is the case, then I will say catch null pointer exception. So now what will happen? Oops. So now what happens, how the system will behave in this way, it will first run the try. If there's an exception in the try, then it will check what kind of exception was thrown. Was it a null pointer exception? Was it a number format exception? Based on the type of exception, it will execute only that block. So let's do another quiz. So now, can you guys tell me quickly, or maybe instead of writing all of this, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now you guys tell me what will be the output. Quickly, just if you can paste in the chat.
2, 4.
2, 4. Okay, someone is saying 2, 4. 2, 4. Okay, I think that was Neha.
Madhuri, sir.
Madhuri, oh, nice. You are in the call. Good. I didn't know that. I didn't see you. Okay, is he? Okay, are you? Your name is Bhusham here? Okay, that's the reason I didn't identify you. Okay. So 2, 4. Yeah. Answer is I don't know. Let's run it, because the truth is in the code. Let's run it. Come on. Run as. Proceed. 2, 4 exactly. Okay. Why? Because number format exception, it will throw number format exception. It will come to 2. The 2 will be printed. But the important point is this will not be executed, because this is only will be executed if that it throws a null pointer exception. So let's see. If I say int x is equal to null. Okay. Okay, there's a problem. I cannot reproduce it like this. Okay, anyway, I have an example for null pointer exception. I will explain it there. I need to create a class and all. So I'll demonstrate there. So instead of remaining on the same, so I tried to explain many different programs into a single one. Let me move to the next one, B. So here again, different kind of exception. Int a1 is 10 divided by 0. This is example, again the same kind of example. So if I run this, it will be stopped abruptly because this is not inside try catch, right? So if I comment it, then the output will be caught. Why? Because 10 divided by 0 is infinity in pure mathematical form, and infinity is not really a number or cannot be called as an integer, and it will throw an arithmetic exception. So if I just run this to show you, run as Java application, proceed, it will say caught. Okay. If I change this to something else, then it will abruptly stop. But if I change this to exception, then also it will be caught, because arithmetic exception ke what we call it in the pardada, right? That is exception, right? So compiler will be happy. Okay, you're not writing arithmetic exception, but okay, you are mentioning exception, so I'm happy with it. No issues, no worries. All right, let me change this back to the original one. Okay, now the C. Now this is again different examples of different kind of exceptions. So here the exception here is array index out of bound exception. Now when, in what case? So we saw in what cases null pointer exception comes, in what cases number format exception comes. We saw in what circumstances arithmetic exception would come. Now we are talking about in what case arrays index out of bound exception would come. The idea is simple. You have an array. It has only two values, 10 and 20. I mean only two values, 0 and 1, right? So if you want to access 10, you will say ARR 0, you will get 10. If you say ARR 1, you will say 20. But here what's happening is someone is trying to print ARR 900, which is not there, right? So exception here would be arrays index out of bound exception. And you see something more interesting here, which is e.getMessage. So the idea is, if you have an exception, you have to save the exception inside a variable. So E here is nothing but your variable. So what you write here in the catch is nothing but a declaration. Okay, declaration of a variable. So E here is a variable and its type is this. Something like what you do here at the top sometimes, right? When you declare a variable, you write something like this, isn't it? Something like this. So instead of writing this here, you're writing it within the catch block, and you're saying whatever exception which is going to be thrown from here, whatever exception is going to be, I'm going to catch it here and I will save the details of the exception in the E. Because as you know, Java is an object-oriented programming. Nothing can stay in Java without being implemented as a class or a method or a type, right? So exception here in Java is also maintained in the form of classes. So E is nothing but an object which is being created at runtime. When the exception was thrown, it was actually got saved inside this variable called as E. And when you implement, when you invoke the method called as getMessage, what you see here as output, I will run this, run as Java application. Index 900 out of bounds for length 2. Okay, so you're actually getting a message. You're getting the exact message what really happened. But if you don't want more details, you can also do something like this. You can say e.print stack trace. This will print the complete message and with stack trace. I hope you know what is stack trace. I will rather show you as well. So if I run this, so it is now showing me the complete stack trace, which is, it is showing me at what line this got thrown. This as well. So I said print stack trace, it's giving me at what line it was actually thrown. And this is the message. And there are different methods available. So there are e.getMessage, there is toString again prints some more details about the error, and there are a few more things, get stack trace, and a lot of things you can do with it. Rather, I'll not talk about it today. Sometimes you need to fetch which method and which class actually actually have thrown it in a string format inside the code at runtime, so that you can use it somewhere. The last line might be confusing for you, so don't worry if you don't understand what I just said. So what you have to worry is about, or what you have to be actually doing is this e.print stack trace, and you can make use of e.getMessage or e.toString. You can use this to see what the details of the exception. Guys, is there anyone who wishes to speak? I mean, I'm getting some noise. Okay. Sujit was on. Okay. All right. 42. Okay. Now the D example is again arithmetic exception. Here, get message. Again, here the integer is a, in B is 0, result a by b. So this is something to demonstrate, because from here you might think, okay, why on earth someone will do this? Because that's straight away stupidity, right? But the programs are not really written like this. Program can be written something like this, wherein the A and B, the program is taking from the user, and user can choose to write anything. I mean, you have a calculator, you can write 10 by, you can choose anything to do. Your program should work properly, right? So if you try to divide 10 by 0 on your calculator, see what happens. The program must be having something like this. So it will say, if you do 10 by 0, I will throw an exception and print that you are doing a stupid thing. Okay, so that's where try catch comes into picture, because your program doesn't really know what's going to happen. What are the things or inputs which the user is inserting? You're not sure of that. You cannot be sure of that. So your program rather has to be more intelligent to handle the user input. So this actually becomes user input. This actually is your program. So your program should be kind of have this capability to handle the stupidity of the user as plainly. This is as plain as I can put. I'll go to the next one, E1. Here that number, so there is an additional block here called as finally. So try catch, so I demonstrated single try catch, and I demonstrated use of multiple try catches. You can have different catch blocks. So try and then 2 catch blocks. And if you are confused, you can add more catch blocks. And if it doesn't comes under number format exception, null pointer exception, then to be safer, you can also put exception E like this. So normally this is how your program should look like. If you're sure of that this kind of can be thrown, then you'd mention it. But at the end, you also mention exception E, because if it gets caught here, fine. If it gets caught here, fine. But if both of these exceptions are not thrown, some different kind of exception is thrown, then it always will be a type of exception. So it will definitely be caught here, right? So a program should always has this. Now, the example which I was actually explaining you was the finally. Okay, so the thing is, sometimes it could happen that you want to run something and you want to catch the exception. You don't want to throw it. So far, so good. But after you catch the exception, then you definitely want to execute something else as well. And that's where your finally comes into picture. So how it would work is, object will be created, then this will be executed. But if it throws an exception, let's say this line throws an exception, then it will be caught here, which is fine, which we already understood. But once this is executed, then it will again execute this for sure. finally simply means no matter what will happen here, no matter whether it's being called or not, I will definitely will execute finally. This block will always be executed. All right, so that's how it works. Guys, I have more examples to show, but we are past 1 hour now, and I really don't want to extend this because for my benefit as well as yours. So because 1 hour is sometimes supposed to be more study within an hour is okay, but if exceeds 1 hour, then your interest might not be that concentrated. So that's the reason I do not extend post 1 hour, and I have few more things to explain. So nested exception handling and a lot of things. I spent kind of more time explaining the first example itself, but I think I have done justice with the basic explanation, and the people who are very new to try catch, even they should be able to understand what's happening. Maybe not everything, but if you try it out, if you try this from example A till example E2, I think if you try it at your end in your own system, then I think you will definitely understand. It's not really very complex concept. And for the advanced student, if you want to try it out, you can try other examples as well. However, I am going to explain this in the next class as well. This is a hardly 10-15 minutes discussion of. Guys, I am getting some disturbance. Can you all go on mute? All right. Okay, guys. So I will not keep you more. For the remaining remaining items here, I will talk about in the next class, and along with some more different Java topic as well. Okay, so your current work is that you should be going to my GitHub repository here, and you should see the code here and download. I hope everyone is now okay with the cloning the repository. So everyone should, I think GitHub session is done. I'm not sure how many of you really completed the assignment, because without you completing the assignment, I cannot be sure whether you really understood the concept of Git. So far I'm assuming if you have done it, understood it, then you have to clone the whole repository. You cannot only clone the single folder. You have to clone the whole repository called as autofret common lib. And once you do that, maybe I'll show you. This is from where you'll get the URL, right? And once you get it, you will get this folder here, Miss Java Concepts, and inside this you will get the code. You will get the whole everything here, and you can then try it out. And if you don't want to download it, it's fine. You can still read from here and try to type it in your own system and work on it. And if you don't have an Eclipse, but if you have a laptop, then you can use online editor to try these code out there. And you can do the experiments like the way I was experimenting, right? I was experimenting with A. This is the best way to learn about any concept in Java. Try experimenting within the same program. What if I do this? What if I do that? What if I do this? What if I change this, right? This should be your mindset. This is curiosity, right? So your curiosity should be in play when you learn Java. Try to modify things, do some things here, change something there. Doesn't matter if error comes. If error comes, that's what we want. If error comes, take a screenshot, post in the group, say I am getting this error, and I'll try to sort it out. That's the best way to learn, guys. Okay. All right, enough said. Let me stop the recording.